Good morning and welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, from the Fourth Estate who have respectfully honored our invitation to come here today before the US Embassy's main gate to both receive updates on the 2 weeks that this family, that is the Kartee's family, has spent in the open here since Wednesday, March 29, 2017, in an effort to have the US government through its embassy here to intervene in having the government of Liberia through the Liberia Petroleum Refining Company to hand deliver to us, this family, led by me, Roland S. Kartee, a corrected copy of a communication that LPRC had intended 4 years back to effect my employment termination from their company. As you will discover ahead, that this is our 4th week of being here. We had to take the 3rd week off to attend to health problems that we have now developed for all the dangers we've been exposed to since we touched foot on this part of Benson Street on March 29, 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, after a series of events demonstrating my respectful disagreement with the LPRC top management for their very criminal and careless running of this purported American-Liberian state-owned enterprise, like all the rest, that makes it impossible for it to ever contribute tens and hundreds of millions to billions of US dollars to government coffers and create thousands of new jobs per annum for the citizens of this place, as a true SOE for a serious people should actually be doing. The LPRC top management ganged up against me and concocted some lies in less than 24 hours as a basis for terminating my 10 years of service with the company up to a departmental manager level on January 25, 2013. Although LPRC, few days later, went to the press, specifically the People newspaper, on January 30, 2013, and denied ever dismissing any Roland Kartee, the company's so-called dismissal letter in my hand, copies of which have been made available to this public and the world over, and which we will have available to spread as much as possible today, claims that I was dismissed without cause, and in addition, the authority responsible for approving this employment termination action, which is the Deputy Managing Director for Administration, abbreviated as DMDA, in person of Mr. Jackson F. Doe Jr., did criminally misrepresent his own title on a professed dismissal letter as Deputy Director General for Administration, abbreviated also as DDGA instead of DMDA, ladies and gentlemen. When we researched LPRC's use of the legal clause of without cause in our case or context, we found it to be criminally ambiguous and erroneous. And when we searched and researched all of LPRC's current charter and official documents, we found absolutely no title called DDGA, but all of them show DMDA. We brought all this to their attention one way or the other, and they conceded to these faults. In addition to these elementary but criminal faults, LPRC also blatantly put aside all civilized, professional, and administrative norms in execution of their professed dismissal action against me. For example, 1. The company failed to have ever officially warned me in the past, let alone did they ever suspend me before, but jumped straight away into so-called dismissal. 2. This American-Liberian company failed to ever subject me to any kind of formal investigation whatsoever before taking their ultimate punitive action based on suspicion. 3. Good management and administrative law dictate that in a conduct of any employment termination process, all documentation requirements must be met by both the employer and the affected employee. In my case, especially as a native of this place, LPRC said, to hell with this law or provision. She claimed she had dismissed me on Friday, January 25, 2013, but details for reasons leading to the intended dismissal action were carelessly communicated to me 10 days after the main action, that is, February 4, 2013. Number 4. Good management and general administrative law dictate that before or during termination, any or all company properties with the affected employee, including current identity, must first be retrieved. To this civil last none, LPRC said in a highly mischievous American Liberian society and working environment, no credence must be lent to any such provision. So their old laptop plus my current official ID card remained with me while this criminally careless American Liberian SOE was boasting that she had fired Roland Kartee. Number 5, good management and general administrative law prescribe that employment termination be a process and not some event, and should have some defined notice requirement, taking up days of formal processes between the employer and the affected employee. LPRC said again to hell with this norm. MDT Nelson Williams derived his one-man suspicion during the evening of Thursday, January 24, 2013, although after childishly calling and confronting me with all sorts of trivial and stupid things for 3 straight days of a 5-day work week up to that Thursday, and by Friday noon or slightly after noon on January 25, 2013, my supposed dismissal was done and dusted in the professional world of American Liberia. And number 6, good management and general administrative law require that decision makers lend serious consideration to the 4 preconditions or simply conditions below before ever taking any disciplinary or punitive actions against their subjects. And these 4 conditions include: 1, the circumstances surrounding the breach or offense; 2, the gravity of the breach or offense; 3, the past record of the offender; 4, the action taken in similar issues in the past, etc. But ladies and gentlemen of the press, LPRC criminally violated all these civilized and professional rules and standards in her so-called action against me, and when I alerted them of some of these clumsy faults in my protest letter immediately after their action, the company acknowledged her faults and agreed implicitly and otherwise that she was guilty of all these faults. Up to 6 months later, that is, up to July 2013, LPRC Board of Directors still referred to me as an employee whose case she was still indefinitely investigating. But when I requested that I be taking my salary home while this indefinite investigation dragged on, especially since there was substance in my case for which the Board of Directors was still struggling to handle it for all these long months, and then I began reinforcing such written requests with telephone calls. It was at this time, right after making one of such calls in a heated fashion on the morning of Monday, July 15, 2013, that Board Chairman Reverend Dr. Herman Brown, out of hatred, mischief, and emotions, again criminally put together another carelessly written and clumsily worded communication called a concurrence letter, finally backing top management for her action against me. Ever since that time, what Reverend Dr. Herman Brown and his then MD Thomas Nelson Williams kept telling me now was rolling go to court. Being an administrator myself, I thought that my first and best step was to remain administrative in my search for redress. Consequently, this decision has sailed me through a process that has taken me up to the highest office of the land, which is the President's office, which I approached on more than 3 different occasions, but got absolutely no response from. I also approached the legislature on more than 1 occasion on this case in different formal ways, with all these efforts to no avail. The next challenge that I and my family faced now was to consider going to court, since all efforts to remain administrative have failed for all these years. But as our culture in the field of information technology, has strongly taught us, we needed to have first researched the issue of justice in this place and the culture and institutions of justice in America, Liberia very well before making any such move, especially after having had a very serious nightmare fighting to engage the administrative angle of things. This long, tedious research, ladies and gentlemen, of the Fifth Estate, established for me, for my family, for all of you out here today, and for all of our fellow citizens, and for the world over, very terrifying findings about American Liberia's culture of justice, let alone the institutions themselves dispensing this justice, and some of these very horrible findings backed by present realities include, so these are the findings after we decide to research the justice system, the issue of justice in this country before making a decision to go there. 1. Even the very supreme law of the land, the very organic laws that govern every societal activity, including how the government is to go about doing all of its work or business, and how the courts are to dispense justice, etc., which is the Constitution, is so full of all sorts of mess and criminal lies that must be changed in order to make it legitimate. But the white-collar terrorist organization called government here will just not do it. So, the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, full of all this mess, we have a government sitting over it that has refused to revise it, to change anything about it formally. That's the first astounding research finding we got. As proof of this deadly claim, Professor Dr. Elwood Dawn of the University of Liberia established this raw fact and strongly recommended change or revision for change to this Constitution in 2012. And the government deceitfully agreed and set up a constitutional review committee in 2013 to do this job, but came back later, according to reliable sources including the Daily Observer newspaper, to announce that it is abandoning this life-saving job because the project is expensive. Even the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, according to some 2013 report, described this country's constitution as one of the key suspects of the country's many problems. Moreover, the UN Security Council in their September 2015 sitting, according to the UN website, expressed or suggested deep concerns that the country's unwillingness to improve its laws and institutions posed threats to both regional and global peace. Number 2, we're listing the findings. Number 2, even the very national symbols and emblems, including a flag, a seal, the motto, etc., that should be instruments to steer every citizen, including ourselves, in the same direction, or that should help to instill confidence and trust in citizens for their civic structure and institutions, and also that should serve to gain a commitment of all citizens to work for the common good of society. Those instruments that should serve as the embodiment of the principles and ideals of society, etc. All for Liberia do only represent the interest of just one, the American Liberians, out of the 17 somewhat former ethnic groups of this land, to the sad and cruel neglect of the interest of the vast indigenous majority to which I belong. The American Liberian government of today did concede this dangerous civic defect and set up a symbols review committee in June 2014, according to the local media, to review and revise all of Liberia's 40 and messy national symbols and emblems. But this white-collar terrorist organization called government here, which cruelly kills future generations well in advance through their very mischievous policies, will never do this job, as doing so will culminate into such undesirable results for them as huge losses to their sources of illicit cash for money laundering, for instance, and other criminal activities. This kind of revision of the symbols and emblems, moreover, promises to end up with many additional disastrous outcomes for America and the American Liberians, in such things as a complete change of name for our country, a change of our current flag, a change of our current motto, etc. All of which will terminate America and American Liberians' foul smelly influence over our society. And these are all things that this superpower and their surrogates here called American Liberians are dug in their heels never to easily accept right now. These are findings from our research. 3. That in Liberia, there are roughly 3 sets of already faulty or funny laws to govern human affairs, with one set for handling American Liberians exclusively, one set for serving the interests of the so-called well-connected based on American Liberian standards, a set which serves the interests of both American Liberians and a few native collaborators, especially within the top echelons of their government. And the last and most brutal set of laws are those used by the Black American legal system here to further suppress, oppress, and kill the huge and badly marginalized common people of this place, which in reality are our huge indigenous masses, with such things as lifetime jail sentences, unjustifiably long jail sentences, and long unheard of pretrial detentions, among other things. Proofs abound for such mockery out of this divine concept of justice as is being executed here by the American Liberians. That's why in this place, for example, in Florence Chinoway, serving as some board chair and minister, and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf president, and an entire legislature, etc., will formally and finally approve explicitly or implicitly a huge batch of private use premise PUPs for logging companies, but then a Wube and a few natives will have to go to jail for 10 years only because they just initially signed the same batch of PUPs that were approved by their bosses one way or the other. ELBC, AllAfrica.com, Daily Observer newspaper, and so forth, June to August, etc., 2015. Number 2, that's why a McLean, a Johnson, and their Parkers and Sherman collaborators, etc., will criminally run to bankruptcy and ultimately demise a national oil company or NOCA and get handsome severance benefits in return. But then a poor native Peewee Flomo, serving as junior accountant at the same NOCA, will be accused of squandering or embezzling some US $16,000, quickly processed by the American Liberian court system, and then sentenced to 2 years imprisonment and further asked to restitute such amount. Daily Observer newspaper, ELBC, or in 2014. Number 3, that's why Clemency Ure will be quickly acquitted after he had reportedly demanded that the president be made to stand in the dock along with him in court if the government ever meant business, for accusing him of some financial malpractices at the same NOCA. But then a poor native Wesley Jew will be subjected to 5 years imprisonment for some claimed financial malpractices at the National Drug Service, according to the Liberian News Agency in January 2016. Number 4, that's why a Johnson and the entire government will admit to criminally blundering in the signing of key concession agreements, although they will not change these criminally flawed concession agreements, including, for example, their 98-year Golden Ferroleum deal, their 70-year Sam David deal, their multiple decades long ArcelorMittal steel deal, etc., according to several sources, including the UK-based Publish What You Pay Coalition, RSSnews.com. But then, very poor tribal Sano County citizens who went to protest for their rights stolen in this criminal Golden Ferroleum deal will have to face very dreadful conditions under pretrial detention up to 2 years now. The poor Yedoki, Prince Zodwa, Jerome Zume, etc., that went agitating for their cruelly stolen rights in the criminally flawed ArcelorMittal deal or NO deal, do now face up to 10 years imprisonment, etc. Number 5, that's why even though a Tyler, a Lawrence, and the likes have been sufficiently booked for all of the serious economic crimes in this country, but are still passing around enjoying their positions and powers unmolested. All of their privileges, they are enjoying them unmolested. Yet the Yancy Bawe, the Isaac Tanyon, the Stephen Glotto, etc., from the Crown ethnic group in Judea County do language behind American Liberian bars for life in very squalid conditions for what, according to renowned legal practitioners, the ever revengeful American Liberian government has failed as yet to substantiate, etc. and etc. To cap all this, ladies and gentlemen, our strong research findings are all corroborated by the mighty United States Department of State in almost all of its human rights report on Liberia. An executive summary or introductory paragraph of some of its most recent editions, which reads, quote, "The most serious human rights abuses in Liberia are those linked to lack of justice, judicial inefficiency, corruption, lengthy pre-trial detention, denial of due process, and harsh prison conditions," unquote, etc. In addition, these US-based reports consistently recognize and establish that there exists a serious culture of impunity and ethnic discrimination going on in this place. With all these points or facts well established, fellow compatriots, being conscious of our obligation to God first, then to our fellow citizens and society at large, especially taking into serious account the divine principle of to whom much is given, much is expected, and then finally strongly establishing that it is America that set up this civic theory or foundation called Liberia through its American colonization society, and that it is this same America that continues to run their Liberia one way or the other up to today, etc. and etc. We have decided to use this single case of our illegal dismissal with a faulty letter to forge a genuine and sustained partnership with this world superpower for the final liberation and ultimate independence of our ever suppressed and suffering people of this land once and for all by the grace and power of God. We do feel the stark injustice, unspeakable human indignity, and horrible deprivation faced by our people for these long 194 years now, and we see no way of ever relieving them of these harsh conditions without a genuine and sustained collaboration with the Americans. But as deeply rooted or entrenched as this sad condition or reality is in our home, so too must the collaboration sought to adequately deal with it be deeply rooted and sustained. That's Newton's third law. And in the reading of this simple family in our mighty Printing Revolution, no such collaboration, as deeply rooted and sustained as it must be in order to succeed, can ever be built on any trace of deceit, pretense, lies, and sycophancy and stuff like that. That's why we are massively transparent, we are massively truthful with just everything that we're presenting. Therefore, in order to demonstrate this conviction with love and respect for America, we, that is this small African family, under the banner and on behalf of a bigger national civic endeavor, the Printing Revolution, to 4 round years, 2013 to 2017, braving all of the very harsh conditions of going without comfort and sometimes even food, to document every key fact, no matter how toxic, about this 200-year-old relationship between our home and this superpower, a relationship which we've now finally and thoroughly established to be hugely responsible for all of the super mess that we currently find ourselves in as a people in this place today. That's why, as part of this civic action that we are on today, immediately upon entering the premises of the US Embassy and beginning to engage with them on March 29, 2017, we presented into their custody 5 giant pamphlets and 6 audio CDs, totaling around 300 pages of literature and 27 hours of voice playback time respectively in support of the convictions that have brought us here. In our reading, for us, the vision bearers of this new dream for Mama Country to ever forge this strongly needed collaboration with the Americans, the first step is to prevail upon them through this polite demand that we are making here now, to use their glaringly unmatched influence over the government of Liberia to ensure that LPRC hand delivers to us through these actions our corrected and authentic dismissal letter, since no one else can ever exert such influence over Liberia and its institutions in our understanding equal to them, the Americans. That's why we have been here, that's what we have been here for, since Wednesday, March 29, 2017, with today, Wednesday, April 19, 2017, marking day 3 into our 4th week, even though we took up the 3rd week virtually attending to our health needs after 2 straight weeks of experiencing massive sunshine and mosquito bites, with the embassy unfortunately showing no concern for our small family as yet. Our fellow citizens and the world over, by taking these strange, bold and honest steps, however, we also need to make the following key points, or to send out the following clear signals to the American government and people. And some of these very key lessons, signals and points that we hope to send out, or that we aim to send across, can be proudly outlined here as follows. So we're saying these are the reasons behind all of our actions. The reasons, we listed about 5 reasons here. Number 1 is so long, so let's start with number 1. Why we think that these radical actions must be taken. Number 1, we believe that the gross negligence acted by LPRC that brought us here today is a normal culture of the Liberian government, which too adapted this very criminally careless way of handling human affairs from how her master, the great United States of America, erroneously handles issues pertaining to this place. So nothing happens for nothing. America Liberia has copied this culture of criminally carelessly handling human affairs from how America erroneously handles issues pertaining to our home. And so, to begin righting our many wrongs, past and present, in these directions, we should be able to constructively bring together all of the major stakeholders in this quagmire using a single case, a single event, a single instance of proof, which fortunately has turned out to be our single bogus dismissal issue at the LPRC. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let's just bring you some solid argumentative proofs of how every activity of the Liberian government is marred by criminal errors from 1822 to date, but with emphasis on the current government just to save us time, and how this culture was initiated by the United States government here and continues to be sustained by America up to this point. In fact, to take you off track a bit, if one were to find one cohesive rationalization that has engineered and justified the massive destruction and humiliation of our people in this country for the past 2 centuries now, a rationalization that has been successfully defending why the blood stains of our people splash in every corner of this country without anyone's concern. Take for example the current TRC process, a rationalization that justifies why children across our country sit on the bare floor to take inadequately prepared lessons from poorly trained and ill-equipped teachers. A rationalization which makes it acceptable for pregnant women in parts of our country to walk for 2 days before reaching a poorly equipped and poorly staffed health facility, some of which use flashlights in this golden age of the Silicon Valley to conduct delivery on our poor indigenous mothers and sisters. A rationalization that has made all these uncivilized and mischievous circumstances and realities, and even more appalling ones not mentioned here, to now be considered normal and accepted as the fate of a whole people forever, etc. then that rationalization, ladies and gentlemen, will appropriately be that the government of Liberia was merely established to prosecute a war against the masses of our country, 99% of which are our poor indigenous population, under the guise of making mistakes and procedural errors. So that's it. That's the big excuse. They do anything and the excuse is procedural error. Sorry, we had a little distraction. So as we were saying, this is the rationalization. Everything happens here. The broad day killings of our people, the broad day marginalization of our people, everything is done under the guise of making errors, making procedural errors, and so forth. Coming back on track, we say here, therefore, therefore is a small sample of the numerous criminal procedural errors and professed mistakes made by the government of Liberia, including the very president of this country, every day. These are just a few drops in the ocean of recorded proofs, as it is obvious that many of these kinds of stupid criminal errors do actually go unreported on a daily basis. Please note that for the sake of time, we are not going to cite all of the various sources or to include them in details, but you are encouraged to get hold of our other revolutionary works if you are interested in the details about every claim made here. We start off as follows. Number one, so we're listing all the criminal errors made by the structure here called government. These are the motivations that cause us to take the actions that we are taking now. We're saying people do these things mischievously and just blame it on errors. In 2012, a Danish journalist, Mr. Max Johan Brugger Kudsen, in an effort to expose the weaknesses and corruption within the Liberian so-called system, intentionally fraudulently purchased a Liberian diplomatic post, an official passport from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, using US $150,000, with all the papers pertaining to this criminal transaction reportedly signed by all concerned parties, including President Sirleaf. On front page African newspapers, Ronnie C. later quizzed the president on this criminally embarrassing issue. She admitted signing all of Kudsen's documents, but claimed that Mr. Kudsen was a criminal and an impostor. In her direct words, quote, he broke the system. There's no question about that, unquote. 2. Madam Sirleaf is on record more than once now that she is in a constant breach of Liberia's already bogus constitution by appointing American citizens in the government. Because of her over-eagerness or hyper-passion to appoint more and more American citizens within government excuse, it is reported that without any due diligence, she some time ago appointed one John Stewart, an alleged American citizen who had 13 criminal indictments hanging over his shoulders in Washington, D.C., to manage the Liberian Maritime Authority. Then alarm blew, apparently from the U.S., before this criminally careless appointment was ever nullified. Number 3. Just as all American Liberian presidents, with the exception of productive President William R. Tobert, did in the past, President Sirleaf is always signing huge concession agreements all around the place, ranging from agricultural concession agreements to those in the nation's emerging but already damaged in advance to corruption oil sector that are marred by major so-called procedural errors. Again, errors with criminal intents, and she proudly admits to these errors in the public. 3 cases in point are as follows. A. In a US $10.7 billion agreement that saw Liberia's oil blocks 11, 12, and 14 going to Chevron, an American oil company, former Auditor General John Mullen uncovered a series of briberies and other scandals surrounding this deal that warranted its outright cancellation, and therefore made his strong recommendation quickly for such annulment of the deal. For example, the General Auditing Commission, or GAC, dug out and confirmed that prior to the ratification of the deal, a recorded amount of US $118,400 had been dished out by Chevron to the National Oil Company or NOCAL to the criminal Liberian legislature to grease their pants. When John Molu proved all these points and appropriately recommended that new biddings take place for these 3 key All Blacks, Madam Sally, a whole Harvard-trained president, complained that nullifying the contract as the Auditor General had ethically, morally, and legally requested, though the facts are glaring, will take up precious time, in her words. In the direct words of this American Liberian queen of corruption, President Sirleaf, quote, going back to the drawing board to rebid the blacks would take years and delay Liberia's oil exploitation or exploration gains, unquote. B. According to the RSSnews.com, quoting the UK-based Publish What You Pay coalition, the president told the people of Great Cape Mount County in early 2012 that she and her government made errors with the 70-year Same Derby concession agreement. C. According to the same source above, which is RSSnews.com, President Sirleaf admitted to the people of Sano County in April 2013 that her government blundered in a 60+ to 98-year-long Golden Petroleum concession agreement, etc. Number 4. In a March 2014 letter written by President Sirleaf to the National Legislature in response to Representative Buffer Chambers' claim that the Liberian government had crookedly used over US $260 million in overseas image building and public relations campaigns, the president described the lawmaker as uninformed and described his claim as irresponsible and preposterous, but yet at the same time, she made some very elementary mistakes within that same insulting communication, including making mistakes with such things as the very date of that letter. Number 5. At year-end, December 31, 2014, in a chat with Ome Radio's Torun Solante, Ellen hastily and negligently announced the reopening of schools the next month, January 2015. Without ever consulting any of the educational stakeholders, this turned out to be a very big embarrassment when as far later on as the 29th of January 2015, Education and Health Ministries authorities met the Senate and announced their unpreparedness for the exercise, as they had just completed 1 out of 23 activities or conditions required to be put into place before the reopening of schools. As a result of this embarrassment, Education Ministry officials started disgracefully fumbling over the date of school reopening, with some claiming and reclaiming February 16, 2015 and March 2, 2015 respectively. In the end, Deputy Minister Ramsey Kumuya had to apologize to the public for the nuisance that his ministry had caused regarding this wonderful school reopening date after their so-called Ebola. Number 6. Article 47 of the Liberian Constitution requires a Senate Pro Tem election to be held once every 6 years. This means, in order to ensure compliance with this constitutional provision as lawmakers, Senate standing rules should have been crafted to bar non-qualified candidates based on tenure to stand for the position. For example, any senator whose years of service before re-election as a senator is less than 6 years should not be allowed to stand in a pro tem race. Councillor Jonathan Williams, Director of Legal Affairs at the Liberian Senate, told ERBC News on January 22, 2015 that the current Senate ignored his advice and blundered 3 years ago to have elected Senator Gleson Gaffini of Grand Bassa County, who had only 3 more years left as a senator. And so they were continuing the same blunder again in 2014 to go to the polls for pro tem elections just 3 years on. As a result, again, ladies and gentlemen, Article 47 has joined a long list of bogus articles within an already bogus Liberian Constitution that continue to be deliberately violated here and there. Number 7. On January 18, 2015, a 12-year-old child, Musu Fofana, was raped around a Hotel Africa building in Monrovia. Her parents managed to get hold of her while still alive and decided to rush her to hospital. After 2 clinics reportedly refused to attend to her, the parents decided to use a police clearance or permit given to them by their local police depot or authority to rush the little bleeding girl to the city's only major referral hospital using an ordinary vehicle due to the lack of ambulances in the country. On their way, another police unit arrested and detained their vehicle on some apparent suspicion due to the speed they were on or so. Musu's parents showed this second police unit the clearance given to the already distressed family earlier by the previous police unit, but the second unit refused to honor that clearance and as such kept bleeding Musu in a car detained on the roadside until she met her untimely death. Reports filtered in later that the national police authorities offered to investigate their men for this negligence, while the president went on to console the bereaved family, apparently to offer another apology on behalf of a darling police force without any known administrative action ever taken to prevent the reoccurrence of such gross lack of coordination within such a major arm of government law enforcement. Number 8. Credible reports speak of constant blunders within a very official protocol conducted at programs attended by the president. One case in point was during the president's 2015 State of the Nation's address. It was reported that electrical wires and other connections were still being run while canopies were still being set up as the president and foreign guests arrived. Some key members of the National Traditional Council who were duly entitled to seats during that occasion were reportedly left unattended to and standing for the rest of the program. 9. All of the 6 counts below are errors or mistakes of somewhat different natures committed by the Liberian president and government in handling just one health crisis, Ebola, in about 2 years. First off, we say Ebola hit Dakar, Senegal, and had a 0 fatality in mid to late 2014. It hit Nigeria's 20+ million population city of Lagos and claimed less than 10 lives in the same late 2014. Ebola also hit Mali around the same time and claimed less than 8 lives. Ivory Coast, a country surrounded directly by 2 worst hit Ebola countries, Liberia and Guinea, administratively and professionally tightened its borders and heightened its public health surveillance so magnificently that within more than 2 years of the outbreak of this disease within its neighbors, not a single case of Ebola was ever reported in that West African country. But for carefree and criminally careless Liberia, Ebola hit a less than 1,700 population town, Foya, in the far northwest, more than 450 kilometers away from ancient, dirty 1822 Monrovia in March 2014. And these have been some of President Sirleaf's confessions about how she and her government went on handling their Ebola. The now 78 to 79-year former World Bank economist, 78 to 79-year-old former World Bank economist, who has placed under her belt 11 to 12 solid years of experience into the presidency, has said among other things that she was confused and didn't know what to do when Ebola, a public health crisis, struck. As a result of the president's admitted confusion, she went into her usual guessing mode to solve the Ebola problem, just as she always guesses to solve the country's huge economic and other problems fruitlessly, like all other American Liberians except productive President William R. Tubman, as we always mentioned, based on our research. Speaking to BBC's James Menendez on February 12, 2015, the president confessed her government's sluggishness in attending to this health crisis and claimed unto herself the responsibility for this sluggishness, further expressing regrets that she should have earlier engaged the communities at a more realistic level than conducting so-called security crackdowns and other actions that didn't help improve the situation. As a consequence of all these negligence, Ebola killed over 4,800 persons in Liberia, again over 99% of which are our poor indigenous sufferers of all tragedies in this country. This negligence has also caused multiple billions of dollars of losses to poor Liberia and the world at large. Despite all her admitted negligence, Madam Sirleaf was heard boasting that Ebola has made Liberia stronger, while in another development, this woman has won numerous accolades both domestically and internationally for being the heroine in West Africa's Ebola fight. In further strengthening these claims of negligence in the country's Ebola fight, a Liberian political activist, Mr. Darius Dillon, according to Love FM's primetime news on September 29, 2014, blamed the president for what he said was carelessly and incompetently handling the Ebola crisis, and that this, in his opinion, was leading to the unwarranted deaths of many innocent citizens. He cited, among other things, that while Ebola had just started rampaging by April of 2014, Madam Sirleaf was so busy traveling all around the world. And at one point, she spoke from Italy, announcing to the whole world that her health ministry officials and others had advised her that the virus outbreak was under control, and so there was no need to ever panic. Even more frustrated by the scale of the agony, Mr. Dillon asserted with emphasis, quote, "People have stupidly died of the virus, while Madam Sirleaf has done nothing to the people around her whose pieces of advice have dragged our country into such a big mess." Unquote. In addition, Julius Jensen, a civil society activist calling in on a Costa show on August 28, 2014, contended that President Sirleaf should be held liable for recklessly endangering the lives of the Liberian people. Representative Buffer Chambers, appearing on Fabric FM New Dawn on January 14, 2015, disclosed that Ebola was initially a US $10,000 problem if the Liberian government was proceeding well. But according to him, there exists a huge administrative and managerial deficit within the Liberian governance system, a reality which he said had also been acknowledged by both leaders of the United States and Great Britain. Meanwhile, Honorable Chambers had earlier described President Sirleaf as someone who exhibits an absence of thought, according to another local daily or local radio, etc. and etc. But ladies and gentlemen, let's outline a few incidental proofs of these overwhelming so-called mistakes and unimaginable procedural errors that criminally characterized Liberia's professed Ebola fight from 2014 to 2015 as follows. A. At the handling of some ill-conceived quarantine imposed on a poor-slum community of West Point in Monrovia in August 2014, the newly trained and working 2,000-strong armed forces of Liberia negligently killed 16-year-old Shaki Kamara. Later on, the army came up to apologize for this negligence. The president, Madam Sirleaf, capped this confession of negligence with another admittance that her army made errors in handling the West Point incident while fighting Ebola. B. In management and leadership, it is said that public appreciation serves as a strong source of motivation. President Sirleaf identifying countries that had tremendously stood by the side of Liberia in its Ebola fight during her January 26, 2015 State of the Nation's address, listed countries such as Nigeria and the United States, but left out a wholly noticeable all-weather friend like China, who was in fact the very first country to have brought in a whole US $1.8 million plane load of drugs and equipment to give Liberia its first sign of relief in battling Ebola. Whether she had a political motive or not, this was another big blunder again. She extended this blunder by appreciating a number of outstanding individuals in the Ebola fight and leaving out Representative Sir Joseph, the only high-ranking government official who would get behind the ambulance steering himself to rush patients to hospital. C. The research coordinator for the Ebola Incident Management System and co-investigator of the Partnership for Research on Ebola Vaccine, so-called Partnership for Research on Ebola Vaccine in Liberia, or PREVAIL, that Stephen Kennedy admitted to error in the administration of their Ebola trial vaccines because there was not enough or just no public awareness prior to administering these vaccines. He said, quote, "It was an error on the part of Prevail not to inform and educate politicians, civil society organizations, and the media and the public before commencing the vaccine exercise," unquote. D. As a result of President Sirleaf's ineptitude and criminal carelessness, just as in the case of the 3 Me American Liberian actors that were involved in our bogus employment termination process at LPRC, that is Thomas Nelson Williams of Atlanta, Georgia, Jason F. Doe Jr. of Chicago, Illinois, and Colonius Miami of some other states in the United States. The American government sustained massive loss. Get the thread connected word here. Based on President Sirleaf's ineptitude and criminal carelessness, the American government sustained massive loss in the Ebola fight in West Africa, mainly Liberia. According to the New York Times newspaper, in the largest American intervention ever in a global health crisis, the US government had spent a staggering $1.4 billion in its Ebola mission in West Africa, mainly in Liberia, including the deployment of multiple hundreds of US troops at a cost of $360 million and constructing a total of 11 Ebola treatment units or ETUs around Liberia upon Ellen's direct request to President Obama that everybody was about to die in this country. And interestingly, of these 11 ETUs built with hundreds of thousands of United States dollars of all US taxpayers' money, 9 of these 11 ETUs never hosted any patients at all, while the 2 that did only hosted a combined total of 28 patients when each ETU was built to host 100 patients reportedly. A Swedish medical expert advising the Liberian Health Ministry, apparently on behalf of the World Health Organization, is quoted as saying, quote, "My task was to convince the international organizations that you don't need any more ETUs. I warned them, including the Liberian government, that the only thing you will see when you go ahead with your new ETU constructions will be empty ETUs, so don't do it," unquote. Liberia's current Deputy Health Minister, Dr. Francis Kartee, added, quote, "I knew that most of the ETUs that were being built may not receive any single patient, but at the same time, you could not put a stop to that process, for the train was coming full force," unquote. This is according to the New York Times, April 11, 2015. To sum up all of the negligence of Madam Sirleaf and her government in handling the Ebola crisis, Reuters reported on December 1, 2014, how the World Health Organization alarmed that the government of Liberia had mistakenly inflicted the number of Ebola deaths by a staggering 1,000. According to the WHO, Liberia's Ebola death toll was at 3,016, but surprisingly, just within 2 days, the government, we will say here, shamefully, recklessly, and criminally sent an updated figure of 4,181. Up to date, it is not clear whether anyone in government was ever punished for making such a fatal and denigrating so-called mistake, etc. and etc. Ladies and gentlemen, we could go on listing all of the criminal carelessness and so-called procedural errors of those calling themselves the societal front runners of this place. A nasty culture that they have miserably now inculcated into our entire society, for which one will wonder, where will progress ever be made, or where will progress ever come from in such an environment? And most distressingly, how can this deadly disease of criminal negligence that has permeated our society for more than 190 years now ever be rolled back in this life? But we will pause for now on them. The sad fact, however, ladies and gentlemen, of the press and my fellow compatriots in Radio Land, is that nothing of this nature actually happens by chance, but instead these things happen with some deep-rooted foundation from somewhere. To this effect, we would like to categorically state here that all this long string of carelessness and flirting with a whole people's future and destiny by the American Liberians in this place, in the name of errors and mistakes, have been a culture inculcated into them by their master, Uncle Sam, or the great United States of America. Let's therefore try to reconcile the below historical comportment of America in Liberian affairs from the very conception of Liberia in 1816, 200 years on, or 200 years ago, up to this point today. We will try to connect the dots using several instances of the conjunctive preposition, even though, as you will see below. That is, we are arguing one or a. Even though the American Southerners, and who live in the southern part of America, who established their American colonization society to raid their land of criminal black elements that is said were terrorizing their country through different rounds of slave rebellions and other illicit activities, have used 4 adjectives to describe their ACS targets as 1. Morally lax, 2. Mentally inferior, 3. Criminally oriented, and 4. Promoters of mischief. The Americans still insultingly went ahead and said that they were bringing this same caliber of blacks to Africa, to this Liberia, to Christianize and civilize our home. This is according to history. Let's repeat this point. We say the number 1 or A, even though the American Southerners, or those who live in the south of America, who established their American colonization society to raid their land of criminal black elements. Excuse for the environment. We have too many distractions in this environment. We go back and say, A, even though the American Southerners, who established their American colonization society to raid their land of criminal black elements that is said were terrorizing their country through different rounds of slave rebellions and other illicit activities, have used 4 key adjectives to describe their ACS targets as morally lax, criminally oriented, mentally inferior, and promoters of mischief. The Americans still insultingly went ahead and said that they were bringing the same caliber of blacks to Africa, to this Liberia, to Christianize and civilize our home. This is according to history. B, even though America have vowed not to recognize Liberia's independence because it insisted that the founders of Liberia, their ACS back to Africa products of the 4 key adjectives mentioned earlier, were pure rogues and mischief makers who totally lacked every iota of self-governance. The same United States in 1862 swallowed its earlier vow and recognized Liberia's independence merely for the sake of America's economic gains over other European powers in this part of West Africa. New York Times, February 5, 1862. C, even though this America, we know, is the biggest single nation champion and police of democracy in our current world. When criminals took guns and gruesomely murdered sitting President William R. Tolbert in 1980 in this place and seized power in Liberia, Washington unprecedentedly stepped up its financial support to the Liberian government under the broad day killers of productive President Tolbert and his several officials at a scale never before seen in Liberian history, as America's support climbed from an annual amount of US $20 million to a walloping 75 million United States dollars per annum. Wikipedia and other sources. D, even though America champions the cause of morally upright and democratic tenets both at home and all around the world, the same United States aided one way or the other the escape of its own Central Intelligence Agency operative and indicted Liberian government official Mr. Charles G. Taylor from the Plymouth Corrections Palace in Massachusetts in September 1985, a man who then, with the backing of Liberian troops and finances from America, a king, waged one of the deadliest and bloodiest of all recorded civil wars in world history on Liberia from 1989 to 1997. This according to the Boston Globe newspaper, BBC World Service, US Library of Congress, etc. And E, In line with all of our research findings, that Liberia was sadly established to be principally inhabited by criminals and as such to be governed only by criminals, even though it has now been overwhelmingly established that current American Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has had her finger active in every pie of bloodbath that has decimated this country since 1985 up to this point, including her reported defense before the very US Congress in June 1990 of the use of child soldiers in Liberia's nasty and bloody 14-year civil crisis of 1989 to 2003, according to sources such as FocusOnLiberia.wordpress.com, the Public Agenda News.com, etc. America, the biggest known advocate and contributor to the promotion of human rights and the rule of law across our world, has shamefully, erroneously stood by the side of this woman, using meaning America's huge global influence to make this woman to win all of the prestigious accolades in our world, ranging from the very reputable Nobel Peace Prize to the Presidential Medal of Freedom awarded to her by President Bush in 2007, and not to mention the 14 honorary doctorate degrees she now has to her credit from universities all across the United States, in addition to the American government's politically motivated award of huge prize money to this Madam Sirleaf and her government through the supposedly objective Millennium Challenge Corporation for so-called good governance and economic maturity, etc. As we will throw a little light on ahead with a long rationalization of even those again, just as we did above, etc. But before we delve into the MCC grant argument or debate, we would like to inform you that the United States government usually publishes a number of key reports on almost all countries around the world, gauging these countries' progress at such national performance indicators as 1. Respect for human rights, 2. Upholding of the rule of law, 3. Good economic management, and the likes. And some of these key reports include 1. The country reports on human rights practices, 2. The Trafficking in Persons Report or TRP report, 3. The Advancing Freedom and Democracy Report, 4. The International Narcotics Control Strategy Report, 5. The International Religious Freedom Report, and 6. Some regular State Department Travel Alert Report, etc. and etc. In all of these 6 major US government reports, and probably many minor ones that assess other countries' progress, including this country, Liberia has always been highlighted for very poor performance. For example, 1. The country reports on human rights practices is submitted annually by the U.S. State Department to the American Congress in compliance with sections 116D and 502B of the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, etc., intended to cover individual, civil, political, and workers' rights in various UN member countries. This particular report, the country reports on human rights practices, this regular report does paint some of the very bleakest of pictures or conditions in this place. So we're saying this particular report, which is the country reports on human rights practices, does paint some of the very bleakest of pictures or conditions in this place, including a land characterized as yet by lack of justice, a land riddled with discrimination, both ethnic and racial, a land plagued with gross impunity, among others. We brought you earlier some excerpt of one of the most recent versions of this report on Liberia as proof. Number 2, the Trafficking in Persons or TRP report released each June, is the U.S. government's principal diplomatic tool to engage foreign governments on human trafficking. According to a recent edition of this report, Liberia is both a source and destination country for the trafficking of human beings for different purposes. 3. The U.S. State Department also publishes some travel alerts in the form of a country report for her citizens wishing to travel to countries including Liberia on some annual basis, as presented at travel.state.gov. Let's just get a few bars of what the 2015 version of this report had to say about 1822 Liberia. So the 2015 report, Travel Alert Report, as presented at travel.state.gov, said the following about Liberia. It starts off by saying, quote, despite over 10 years of peace and economic growth, Liberia is still one of the poorest countries in the world, and many basic services, like for example, public power, water and sewage, and landline phones, etc., are either limited or totally non-existent. Facilities for foreign visitors are adequate in Monrovia alone, but virtually non-existent in the rest of the country, unquote. The report continues on with these additional revelations among other damning ones. B. The Liberian police can be both a source of assistance as well as a source of problem for visitors. Concerns about police corruption continue, and travelers may be detained by police officers soliciting bribes. C. While incidence of crime in Liberia is high, most crimes that occur within an expat community are crimes of opportunity, which increase during the hours of darkness, to include residential burglary or armed robbery, etc. The Liberia National Police have limited capacity to respond to crime events. D. Petty corruption is rampant. Poorly paid government officials and private company employees may ask for fees to do their own job, and travelers may be inconvenienced for not paying bribes. E. Neither running water nor electricity is commercially available in Liberia, except in some parts of Monrovia. Most hotels have utilities available, but not always on a 24-hour basis. There is no working landline telephone system in Liberia. F. The Liberian Weather Service does not provide information on where and when ocean tides form, and there are just no lifeguards posted at beaches. G. Hospitals and medical facilities in Liberia are poorly equipped and are incapable of providing many services. Emergency services comparable to those in the United States or Europe are non-existent, and blood supply is very unreliable and unsafe for transfusion. For serious medical problems, U.S. citizens in Liberia should consider traveling back to the United States or Europe or South America for treatment. Within Liberia, medicines are scarce, often beyond expiration dates, and generally unavailable in most areas. Additionally, counterfeit medications, often very well packaged, are common in pharmacies throughout the country. I. Malaria is a serious and sometimes fatal disease that is highly prevalent throughout Liberia in all seasons in both cities and rural areas. Before traveling to Liberia, you should discuss with your doctor the best anti-malaria medication to avoid malaria, which should be taken for even short visits confined to Monrovia. J. Driving in Liberia presents a danger to residents and visitors, as traffic laws are either non-existent or not enforced. Potholes and poor road surfaces are common, making safe driving extremely challenging. Cars, trucks, motorcycles, and taxis are often overloaded with people and goods, and vehicles make frequent stops without signaling. Drivers overtake on the right lanes as well as on the left lanes. Many vehicles operate with threadbare tires, and blown outs are frequent. Public taxis are poorly maintained and usually overloaded. K, last but not the least, as there is no direct commercial air service to the United States by carriers registered in Liberia, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, has not assessed the government of Liberia's Civil Aviation Authority for compliance with International Civil Aviation Organization or ICAO aviation safety standards yet, etc. and etc. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the same country with such a nasty profile that we could go on listing endlessly here again. if it were not for time's sake, that the mighty United States Millennium Challenge Corporation, or MCC, did qualify as having performed relatively well in 17 good governance and economic management indicators, including productive matrices as 1. Government effectiveness, or A. Government effectiveness, B. Rule of law. These are the indicators upon which Liberia won that $256.7 million that we're going to lay some emphasis on here. B. Control of corruption. C. Increased public expenditure on health. E. Increased public expenditure on primary education. F. Responsible natural resource management. G. Good inflation rate management. H. Good regulatory quality. And R. Good fiscal policy management, etc., etc. There are 17. We just listed about 8 or 9 here, and awarded US $256.7 million in prize money for what Madam Dana J. Hyde, Chief Executive Officer of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, described was a manifestation of the United States support to Liberia for the attainment of sustainable development and economic prosperity. This is according to the Liberian News Agency in 2015. So, Madam Dana J. Hart, Chief Executive Officer of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, said the Liberian government was getting this support from the United States for the attainment of sustainable development that we see all around here. That we see electricity all around, and good economic prosperity or economic prosperity. We continue, but in the same kind of rationalization that we did earlier, using a long string of the conjunctive preposition, even though. Let's now list just 22 iniquitous things among hundreds that the U.S. State Department, whose boss heads the board of directors of the MCC, knew and knows very well about this Liberia in advance before ever granting to it such huge compact, and not even a threshold amount according to the MCC standards. And thus our argument goes like this too. We say with the saddest of heart again that, so we're saying all of what we're going to list here again in brief are things that this United States Department of State knows about Liberia, and she heads the board of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, yet she sat there and approved $256.7 million to come to this government. That's why they are using today, you see them building that funny thing to balance between all the funny things you see them building around. It is from this $256.7 million. It's not money generated by this government herself. So some criminal things are going on, or on some procedural errors and so forth, and they get prize money in return, and that's why you see things going on in the name of development. So we say with the saddest of heart that these are the things that the American government knows about Liberia, and despite all of this knowledge, she went ahead and dished out this money. We see number one, even though Liberia ranks 57th among 203 countries and territories where government officials steal their country's monies and secretly deposit them in Swiss and other foreign bank accounts, according to the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. This is according to Front Page Africa, February 12, 2015. Also the Perspective.org, February 17, 2015, etc. 2. Even though a 2014 report featured on Wikipedia ranked Liberia 4th among the world's 7 biggest victims of capital flight and financial repatriation. Number 3, even though Liberia is one of the 2 countries that tap a few countries in the world which conduct some dubious ship registry program under the nomenclature Flag of Convenience, according to which more than 4,000 commercial ships do fly this country's flag, but with nothing substantial ever coming to its economy. Number 4, even though the U.S. Congress has an instrument that amends the American Internal Revenue Code of 1986, designating Liberia as an official tax haven for American companies, including the likes of Liska, Celcom, etc., according to sources. under which American companies operate here without paying a cent to the Liberian government in taxes and other payable fees. This is according to the Nicholas Cook Congressional Research Service, Library of Congress, and the report titled Liberia's Post-War Recovery, Key Issues and Development, etc. Number 5. Even though the Global Financial Integrity Group ranks Liberia as the world's second notorious country with the most illicit outflow of money, allafrica.com 2015. And Front Page Africa Online 2015. Story titled Liberia Leaks Millions, ranks high in tax evasion. Number 6. Even though Liberia never scored up to 50% out of a 100% required mark each for any of the 17 key Millennium Challenge Corporations indicators of good governance, like the ones we listed earlier, with scores in crucial areas averaging between 10 and 20% persistently. Those are the scores that Liberia had. Between 10 and 20% persistently out of a required 100% mark in the MCC indicators for the country. Front Page Africa newspaper, April 18, 2017. So the US State Department knows very well all of these. Number 7, even though Global Witness has for years now continued to cry out very loudly to the whole world, which America hears in many respects, depicting and suggesting that the structural core government of Liberia from top to bottom is a massive gang of white-collar terrorists and economic vampires, as in their reports such as the New Snake Oil 2015, the Deceivers 2016, etc. Number 8. Even though some of the U.S. Justice Department's Foreign Agents Registration Act or FARA reports sent to Congress explicitly expose the Liberian government's illegal dishing out of almost $500 million by now to powerful Washington D.C. based law firms, commercial diplomacy firms, and others, including Jefferson Water International or JWR LLC, Liska LLC, Real Stephen Charles, KRL International LLC, BKSH and Associates, etc., to mischievously paint every nasty picture on ground in our country rather positive to the U.S. Congress and other world bodies, for which Liberian government officials, including the president, now walks away with all of the honorary degrees, medals, and countless accolades in this place, while government lacks money to even provide primary education for its babies, let alone electricity, water, roads, and so forth for the bigger ones, etc. These are going to Farah.gov, the perspective.org. In the perspective.org, the story title is this Ellen's Watergate, etc. Number 9. Even though more than 50,000 non-residential companies are created and registered to non-existent 80 Broad Street in Monrovia, but their taxes and other fees are collected and expended by a private American company that is run from the heart of U.S. military facilities in Virginia, the United States of America, when flashlights are used to deliver pregnant women in Liberia due to lack of generators and gasoline to run them in this place. Story title Liberia, America's Outpost of Financial Secrecy, May 26, 2016, George Turner, Finance Uncovered UK. And it can also be found at amabongin.co.za, the OECD, Daily Observer newspaper, etc. Number 10. Even though Transparency International not too long ago ranked Liberia as the world's #1 corrupt country, with the story carried on the front page of America's biggest newspaper, the USA Today. This is according to the story title, US Flip-Flops over Liberia. Say what you mean what you say. Front Page Africa, December 8, 2015. Number 11. Even though a leading newspaper in our country, the Front Page Africa newspaper, has categorically blamed the American government for recklessly playing with the future of the good people of this country. December 8, 2015. Number 12. Even though another top newspaper outlet in our country, the Hot Pepper newspaper, quotes President Obama as naming Liberia among a very few African countries whose leaders are pure thieves and common criminals. This is according to the hotpepperliberia.com. Story title, Obama names rogue presidents, August 1, 2015. Number 13. Even though a National Chronicle newspaper July 2014 publication quotes some recent UN Security Council report as saying that President Sirleaf is aware of all of the funny things happening in our country but pretends to be sick. And in response to these embarrassing realities, President Obama remarked, quote, "From Nuremberg to Yugoslavia to Liberia, the U.S. has seen that the end of impunity and the promotion of justice are not just moral imperatives, but are stabilizing forces in international affairs, while pledging the United States support for the establishment of a war crimes court for Liberian criminals, etc." This is according to the National Chronicle newspaper. Story titled, "U.S. Government Slams Liberia Again. President Sirleaf's Fate Hangs in Limbo." July 24, 2015. Number 14. Even though the National Chronicle newspaper draws the public's attention to the fact that it has been informed that the United States have instructed President Sirleaf to announce the establishment of a war crimes court on June 27, 2014, but that Ellen continues to shy away from this key function because of her own involvement with those war crimes, using her ever-powerful US-based commercial diplomacy firms to plead her case for the cruel cancellation of this key justice-related project. And this cruel underhand scheme is succeeding. Let's go back to number 14. We said number 14, even though the National Chronicle newspaper draws the public's attention to the fact that it has been informed that the United States had instructed President Sirleaf to announce the establishment of a war crimes court on June 27, 2014. But that Ellen continues to shy away from this key function because of her own involvement with those war crimes, using her ever-powerful US-based commercial diplomacy firms to plead her case for the cruel cancellation of this key justice-related project. And this cruel underhand scheme is succeeding with some official acquiescence of the United States. Chronicle newspaper or hard paper newspaper, in fact Chronicle newspaper, it was then still Chronicle newspaper, US story title, US government slams Liberia again, President Sirleaf fate hang in limbo, July 24, 2014. Number 15, even though the National Chronicle newspaper documented a well-coordinated money laundering and illicit cash transfer scheme deployed by government of Liberia's officials, a scheme that some U.S. authorities must be aware of, that goes like this. Quote, according to the newspaper, Liberian government officials first made Delta Airlines, an American airline, a conduit for illegally transferring their stolen wealth in cash to the United States. Some Liberian officials were caught at American airports with huge undeclared sums of monies. Delta got embarrassed when it was blamed by federal security authorities for aiding and abetting such illegal process, and thus Delta had to pause. Liberian government officials then started using the Liberian embassy's bank accounts in the United States to run their illicit cash transfer and money laundering activities. Again, the Americans discovered this, closed the Liberian embassy's account in Washington, D.C., thus halting the second scheme or conduit. Unquote. As a third and most suitable alternative for now, the newspaper reports, quote, Liberian government officials channeled their monies from a bank on Broad Street in Monrovia to a bank in Freetown, Sierra Leone, then from that bank in Freetown, Sierra Leone to a bank in the Philippines, then from that bank in the Philippines to another bank in Delaware, the United States, from where these monies are now transferred to individual accounts across the United States, unquote, etc. National Chronicle newspaper. Same story title, U.S. government slams Liberia again, President Sirleaf's fate hangs in limbo, July 24, 2014. Number 16, even though Liberia's score on the Tax Justice Network's Financial Secrecy Index stands at a walloping 83% out of 100, which is in the negative, far over notorious Panama, which stands at 72, and Liberia is criminally one of the less than 9 countries and territories of the over 200 countries and territories on this planet that have negatively never passed the first phase of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's Global Forum for Tax and Transparency peer review tests, for which Liberia is now on some European nations' black list of tax havens, and has even been described by countries such as Brazil as a privileged tax haven, etc. This, according to the Africa Report, story title, Liberia, Africa's Unknown Tax Haven with Much to Lose, April 2016. Number 17, even though the U.S. Overseas Security Advisory Council, or OSAC, discloses that the very vast majority of Liberians live on less than $1 per day, with almost zero access to basic social services, and that childhood malnutrition levels are beyond measure, with 39% of children under 5 years of age stunted, that is, can't grow well due to lack of good and enough food. 86% of children 6 to 23 months old are anemic, that is, very pale and sickly in your bodies, always due to lack of good and adequate food, and 53% of them are deficient in vitamin A, etc. Story title, Liberia's Mess and Corruption, the two faces of U.S. stance on good governance, human rights, and democracy in Africa. The Perspective.org, May 17, 2016. Number 18. Even though a Liberia's health needs assessment report done by the United States National Institute of Health, or NIH, discloses former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice as alluding to the fact that the vast majority of Liberian women suffer the fate of being the most deprived women on earth while a woman governs their country, etc. According to the same source right above in number 17 from the Perspective.org. Number 19. Even though hard paper newspaper sources in the United States have informed it that President Sirleaf is using KRL International's Riva Levinson, the woman with all of the connections and contacts in this world, to help the Liberian government to block or disrupt the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, thus rendering the blood of almost 500,000 of our citizens that were gruesomely killed in stupid American-Liberian wars of revenge and power in this country to go in vain, and to dash the hopes of millions of people from ever receiving any form of reparations for the kinds of savage treatments meted out against them in this place for over 2 decades, etc. This, according to the Harper newspaper, story title, Because of Personal Interest, Liberia's Oil Black Sold Cheaply, October 22, 2015. Number 20. Even though the U.S. White House persistently maintained its stance on this black American colonial country originating from 2004, according to its National Emergency Act on Liberia, that this Liberia still remains a major threat to U.S. foreign policy in light of the broad day unlawful depletion of our resources and the removal and subsequent secretion into other countries of our nation's funds and properties, etc. This is according to the Harper newspaper or National Chronicle newspaper, July 24, 2014. Number 21. Even though the U.S. State Department's 2015 Trafficking in Persons report explicitly brands Liberia as a source and destination country for men, women, and children's painful subjection to forced labor and human trafficking, including sex trafficking, as we mentioned earlier. And last but not least, number 22. Even though the U.S. State Department's most recent human rights and other governance activities report on Liberia substantiates similar reports of the past, persistently painting the bleakest and gloomiest of pictures about this illegitimate state, including, for example, a country with corruption accepted and formalized in its public sector, a country where judicial and legal authorities don't as yet even know the very basics of the laws, in a country where human beings are still being treated like animals in this golden age of the Silicon Valley, etc. U.S. State Department's Human Rights Report on Liberia Liberian local authorities, etc. and etc. This same State Department-led Millennium Challenge Corporation still went ahead to grant this very Liberia prize money for so-called good or improved governance and economic management in late 2015. And interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, in a cover letter of this US State Department prepared country report on Liberia or Liberia's human rights culture, Secretary of State John F. Kerry, who submits this report to Congress, states emphatically with warning to all nations, including this fake Liberia, that, quote, violent non-state actors do not come from nowhere. They flourish in the absence of credible and effective state institutions where avenues for free and peaceful expression of opinions are blocked, where court systems lack credibility, where unchecked security forces instill fear in the populations, and where even the most basic of day-to-day transactions by citizens with their own government are characterized by corruption, unquote, etc. Yet, our listening audience, ironically, listeners under the tone of our voice, it is this same Secretary of State Honorable John F. Kerry sitting as the head sitting as the head of the board of directors of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, or MCC, who approved $256.7 million to the Liberian government in prize money for their splendid performance, quote unquote, at good governance and sound economic management, among others. And painfully, as all this goes on, it is only our poor, innocent, and the vast indigenous majority who continue to suffer all of the dire consequences and side effects of these so-called procedural errors and broad day blunders, like what we are agitating for concerning our dismissal letter. That's why for over 190 years of our existence as a people now, we have a population mainly comprising sick, hungry, malnourished, poor, and illiterate people. This is without prejudice to our good, innocent people. There is an almost absolute lack of all basic social services. We have no infrastructural gains to ever boast of, etc. Then we come to number 2, meaning the second reason for which we are taking the kind of stance, the strange approach that you see us taking here today. We say it was the first reason that carried all of those things. We say the second reason, we say, although with all the deep convictions that America is hugely responsible for bulk of the mess that we face here as a people, including the very mess that has brought us here to this embassy grounds today, or this week, or during these weeks, we could just come here begging only for our good American friends to intervene on our behalf, and that's it. That's what the family could have done. We could just come, document only what pertaining to us, and we come to beg the American people to help us. But we're saying, so we continue. We could have, for instance, just sorrowfully written about how we, the natives of this place, with the preponderance of proofs that we now have, do continue to persistently face from historical times to date the harshest of injustice at the hands of the American Liberians and their institutions, while begging the American people to help our family. And this strategy could have worked out for us ever since we came here 3 weeks ago. But in our family's reading, this would amount to grand sycophancy and gross deceit and even betrayal of the kind of plight that our people face, intended only to gain favor and solve our personal problem, as the norm is in this American Liberia. But we chose to do it a different way to benefit all past, present, and future generations, God willing. That's why we took up 4 round years of financial and other forms of difficulties and to document and substantiate every claim that we have against this great United States for our sad collective plight here as a people. And we then had these findings from them, as we have now presented all to them in details. Reason number 3 for this action We seek to throw out this challenge to the Americans that if they are that civilized and democratic enough as our research findings on them establish, which we believe, then they should demonstrate this fact now by mustering the courage to come out of their air-conditioned offices to just talk to this simple protesting family that has stood outside of their main gate here for up to 3 weeks now. No matter the size and color of this family, and no matter the claim that we have come here to make, for we believe in America. Reason number 4 for the action that we are taking. We say we take this action because we also want to use this single case which we believe, which we have ever since given to our country already and to our ever-suffering people by the grace of God as a beginning point for righting our country's many wrongs. So we want to use this case now to begin the process of righting our country's many wrongs, the one that we overlook from the very foundation of the country. We need to start to correct them now, both historical and current. This process of righting wrongs from the beginning to this point in our collective existence, we know, will culminate into unconditional civic imperatives such as, for example, tearing down our current old civic foundation to build a new one, declaring or redeclaring independence for this place, designing and redesigning new civic institutions in our home, etc. So, not to leave you in suspense, let's now outline some of the very elementary but important things that we as a people do have very wrong about our foundation that makes Liberia illegitimate, which we must make right immediately before moving forward. And they include, so we're saying all of these things, people may overlook them as elementary, but these are the things that we need to set straight if anything is to ever work for us in this country. So we start to list them. We say A, the very argument that lies at the heart of the establishment of Liberia is wrong and must be corrected now before any soul ever rests in this country. Fellow citizens were saying to build a country based on the initial argument that hardcore criminals could be systematically rounded up and taken somewhere for them to civilize and Christianize a place is the most iniquitous argument for any God-fearing people to ever take as the foundation argument of their country. And that's the foundation argument of Liberia. Criminals can come to civilize and Christianize our home. This argument must be changed now. And this change begins right now with change to our fake dismissal letter from the LPRC by the grace of God. Additional backings of the claim of this country's wrong foundation design and argument are as follows. A. Liberia's own professor, Dr. Amon C. Sawyer, lecturing at the Indiana University in the United States, once declared that, quote, Liberia is an idea flawed. Repeat, flawed in conception, design, and implementation. B. Dr. James Simon of New York describes the Liberian debacle as a living example of America's ugly affairs with slavery, which produced an illegitimate yet potently abrasive child named the Republic of Liberia, a nation state with a twisted approach and a thwarted modus operandi. This is according to the perspective.org. C. Madam Nancy Oku Bright, in her blockbuster Liberia, America's Stepchild 2002, depicts the painfully sad story of a failed notion underlying Liberia's establishment that former slaves could have ever created freedom and equality if given the power to mold a new social order of their own. Something they failed to do in almost 200 years now, and we are saying here will never do because of their inherent criminality and cruelty. D. Mr. Wilfred Bangura of Liberia's current Senate Pro Tem's office says Liberia was founded on a very false premise. This is according to Fabric FM New Dawn, March 16, 2015. E. According to a renowned Islamic cleric in our country, Sheikh Ali Krai, Liberia was founded out of deceit. Fabric FM, March 2016. F. The British one time in history described Liberia as a mere philanthropic experiment, according to Dr. Joseph C. Bono's Liberian History up to 1847. G. Mr. Martin Colley of the University of Liberia described Liberia as a global recycle bin, where waste products of all kinds, we're saying here by extension, including problematic human beings and criminals, are sent for storage by America. Ladies and gentlemen, almost all historical sources establish the fact that the principal objective that underlied the establishment of Liberia was to have America rid herself of troublesome, unproductive, and criminal black elements. This is terribly wrong to lay the foundation argument of a country, and we repeat, must change now by the grace and power of God, ladies and gentlemen. B. After agents. Point number B, the mistakes that we still living with and continue to live with, thinking that we will ever succeed if we ignore these mistakes. B. After agents acting on behalf of the American government and the American colonization society robbed land from our ethnic forefathers and dumped their black people, these arrogant black immigrants decided to extend this criminal act by illegally encroaching more and more into the indigenous communities and inherited lands. The armless and defenseless ethnic Africans then engaged these self-proclaimed pioneers about their unlawful encroachments into our native lands. Sources say these grievances from our native forefathers went unattended to or were not responded to for protracted periods. When the poor indigenous people mustered the civic courage to defend their rights and to protect their inherited property by rampaging against these strange black American bedfellows with their bows and arrows, it is reported that instead of the so-called civilized black Americans constructively engaging their native counterparts in search of a peaceful solution, they, the black Americans, the Johnsons, the McLeans, the Whigs, and the Tottenhams of today, with support from the United States, mobilized military-style arms and ammunition and massively killed our tribal forefathers in what they today refer to as the 1822 twin battles of Crown Hill and Fort Hill. Immediately upon committing these unspeakable atrocities and crimes against humanity, the mischief-making American Liberians compounded this criminal error by choosing a compromise date or day between these two November 1822 battles and declaring that compromise date or day as National Thanksgiving Day, a day that was officially ratified by the colonial legislature in 1883. Today, insultingly, members of our huge indigenous community still either ignorantly or stupidly celebrate this day. And up to this point, Liberia has failed to honestly move quickly to take responsibility for this grave affront to our tribal forefathers and to correct this criminal error. C. At a phone talk shop that excluded all of our traditional people in 1847, which the founders of this failed state referred to as their constitutional convention, and the only one in these 194 years thus far, a few black American ethnocentric criminals, again heavily assisted by Harvard Law School Professor John Simon Greenleaf, crafted their new nation's professed Declaration of Independence, which among other things reflect the following criminal errors. A statement in the Declaration of Independence, which became the preamble of the country's first constitution, lies and says, quote, "We the people of the Republic of Liberia are originally of the United States of North America." 2. An extremely vindictive and ill-intentioned narrative in the same document suggests that the basis for which Liberia's founding fathers were establishing their country was to seek revenge against the 16 indigenous groups that they had met on ground. Some portion of this document implying this intended vengeance against us reads, quote, "In some parts of that country," meaning the US of North America, "we were debarred by laws from all the rights and privileges of men. In other parts, public sentiment, more powerful than law, frowned us down. We were everywhere shut out from all civil office. We were taxed without our consent we were compelled to contribute to the resources of a country which gave us no protection, unquote. So the black American pariahs, as far as history and their fruits for the past 104 years now have confirmed to us, we're saying here that in the Declaration of Independence here, that this is our time now to mete out these same sorts of cruel treatments that the whites meted us to another group of people. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, these groups of people turned out to be us, the Crews, the Bassas, the Gribbles, the Crowns of this West African territory, the Green Coasts. By making these kinds of statements in such a big civic document, like what we just read in the Declaration of Independence, which still reigns supreme, the founding fathers of Liberia, those guys that Virginia Congressman John Randolph have always described as promoters of mischief, sadly thought that they were laying the foundation for a more psychologically integrated and well-reconciled society like the hell of mess that we now see in this place. Are the same criminal talk shop that Liberia's so-called pioneers and forefathers called the Constitutional Convention, which excluded the Yakbabulos, the Deyugas, the Collies, etc., branding them as wild animals, worthless of participating in such civic engagement. Key national emblems and symbols were adopted, again to the cruel neglect of the interests of these claimed wild animals, the Kartees, the Kawas, and Gafuans, the Conans, the Jalas, and so forth. For example, their seal, bearing the motto, the love of liberty brought us here, was adapted to further back that statement in the Declaration of Independence mentioned above, and their flag of 11 stripes, reportedly representing the 11 black American fathers of negative tribalism at that convention that signed onto the document, was also adopted, all of which were cleverly fashioned to match the divisive illegal name called Liberia that was suggested by Maryland Congressman Robert Gulu Harper earlier. Again, the black American pariahs sadly thought that people could build a vibrant and prosperous society this way. Today, Liberia has yet to realize these points as utterly damaging errors that need unconditional corrections. With respect to the organic law that governs everything else in the country, that is the Constitution, Liberia's Constitution is an embodiment of incredible hypocrisy, perversion of laws, and all sorts of embarrassment. For instance, the current Constitution was, among other things, written under very unfavorable conditions, and as such contains some of the most astonishing lies, unproductive arguments, and some criminal provisions that no one can ever imagine of a group of people calling themselves a civilized people in this 21st century. In response to the critical issues presented in points D and E above, that is, issues about the emblems and the symbols, and issues about the Constitution, grave national issues that continue to hold our common destiny hostage for centuries now. The very astute lecturer of history at the University of Liberia, we said earlier, Professor Edward Dunn, launched a scathing criticism of both the Constitution and all of the symbols, awards, and emblems of the country in 2012 and 2014 respectively, strongly recommending review and subsequent changes to them. During his July 26, 2012 Independence Day oration, for example, Dr. Dunn, expressing his utmost disgust over the level of inadequacies found within this instrument, described Liberia's current constitution as a document replete with different kinds of conflicts and dualities. We add here, apart from it being prepared under undemocratic circumstances. About a year or two later, Dr. Dunn, according to reliable sources, then called for an objective review and redesigning of the nation's symbols and emblems as a means of inaugurating true integration and reconciliation among the people, since these are the tools that foster the spirit of belongingness and oneness among all citizens, since these strong Statements and recommendations were made by Professor Dunn. The Liberian state and government, as usual, has done nothing fundamental as yet to address these grave issues, but continue to tiptoe around them, around these bloody errors. F. This same reality overshadows every other aspect of national life in this rogue state. For example, every natural resource concession deal in Liberia, beginning officially in 1894, according to history, up to 2017, has been heavily marred by criminally intentional forms of law breaking, all under the canopy of errors, blunders, and mistakes, just as it is within our professed January 2013 dismissal letter, as can be attested to by all reputable integrity international institutions, including the UK-based Global Witness, Publish What You Pay Coalition, Moore Stevens, etc. and etc. Fellow citizens, after having brought you all these strong narratives and subsequently blaming the United States for all of them directly or indirectly, let us make it crystal clear here that we do not, and we repeat, not in any way hate America. We are just diligently exercising our civic responsibilities as good citizens of both our country and our world, like any conscious person would do. In fact, we do cherish and applaud this America due to several reasons, including how some of us even personally owe our existence, God first, to some American intervention that we are grateful, proud, and honest enough to always mention anywhere, anytime. We are moreover so grateful and proud of America because she has, in the first place, made us to know all this astounding information about herself, no matter how negative these pieces of information may sound in the human ear. In our view, America has always allowed such transparency in almost all of her human dealings, whether dirty or not, as a clear demonstration of our honest desire to clean up history. That's how civilized people live. We believe such sound culture of always endeavoring to clean up history is a stroke of righteousness. We are confident that by divulging such pieces of information about themselves or their activities, like some of what we have been elaborating on today, and in many of our research works, America proves or provides all of us, especially in this country, an excellent opportunity to improve our very dirty and difficult situation. We do feel further obligated to disclose here how we are greatly inspired by America with faith in God to do all of what we are currently doing here today. That is, mustering such a huge civic courage to stand and advocate for our ever-suffering people of this land, using the plain truth as our only weapon. Some of the very great inspirations that we have been receiving from Americans, which point to our country's situation both directly and indirectly, can be proudly outlined here as follows, among many more. Number one, President Obama, Barack Obama. He inspires us a whole lot by making us understand, among other things, that democracy is not just for holding elections, as American Liberia knows it to be. That's why they're behind you again, saying your only right after your right to live is your right to vote. Mr. Obama said democracy is not just for holding elections. And let us let you know here, Liberia does not run a democracy. Liberia is fake. B, he says every man deserves the right to control your own fate alone. That's not our fate. That's not what's happening to us. Our fate is being controlled, our destinies, everything, our potentials are being controlled by America and American Liberians. C, according to Mr. Obama, if we succumb to people who believe that they are superior to us, then in the end we will be losers, and they too will be losers. That's what's happening in our case here with America. Like this country, the people of this country so much fear America as if America deserves the fear that we should give God. Mr. Obama is saying, if we fear men, and men cause themselves so much superior to us, and we succumb to that particular notion, in the end we will be losers, and that person calling himself superior to us will turn to loser. This whole relationship between Liberia and America, both parties risk turning to losers in the end because nothing is working. It's only evil that is thriving. Only evil is succeeding in this whole relationship because we don't have fear of God in it. This great man, which is President Obama, has said that no matter how many or how much resources a people may have, no matter how many different talents they may possess, once there is no basic rule of law that honestly endeavors to treat everyone equally, nothing else will ever work for that country. This country is a living example. Or this fake state is a living example. In his last State of the Union address, Mr. Obama said, as one of his greatest or even his greatest disappointment, he just frustratingly could not impact America's poisonous foreign policy much. And everyone knows by now, ladies and gentlemen, how this poisonous American foreign policy affects our country so deeply. Then comes number 2, First Lady Michelle Obama. She said no country will ever flourish if it stifles the potentials of its own citizens or its own people. And sadly, this is the main strategy that American Liberians use here to kill us. They stifle the potentials, the talents of their people. That's what American Liberia was established for. 3, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, speaking on behalf of the United States at some Internet Freedom occasion in 2010, Mrs. Clinton quotes President Obama as saying, quote, "The more freely information flows, the stronger societies become." That's why the Plainfield Revolution, copying from this statement, has written so massively. And we will speak massively when God gives us the opportunity, so that more information is made available. Education, massive awareness is created among our people, so that we come to our senses and begin the process of change. Because honestly, we are living as a big embarrassment to God's creation and a threat at that rate to international peace and security. So we continue. Former US Ambassador to Liberia, Madam Deborah Malak, and she made us to understand, that the only economic model that Liberia sadly knows for foreign investment is concession agreements. That's the only thing Liberia knows. She doesn't produce. The whole Liberia is a non-producing society. So the only thing, according to Madam Malak, that Liberia knows is signing concession agreements. Something she said is far way outdated now. At her Independence Day speech on July 4, 2014, at the US Embassy, Ambassador Malak assured the people of this country, Liberia, criminal Liberia, that one of the US government's major roles in helping us out of our ugly situation now would be to advocate for an atmosphere that would tolerate and promote alternative and dissenting views, including public discourses characterized by civility and mutual respect, like what we're doing now. This is according to ELBC, July 4, 2014. 6. U.S. Liberia Embassy official, Madam Sheila Paskman. In July 2014, Madam Paskman, in what our Plainfield Revolution considers the most important admonishment ever received by the people of this land, directly offered her candid advice to the people of this country that in order for us to attend to our huge societal problems, we will have to use our current potentials instead of waiting for some other people to come in the future to do so. But she said the road to achieving this, however, is not, and we repeat here, not by waiting to hold some public office first, but instead by putting up some form of responsible community or grassroots leadership. This according to the local radio news on July 26, 2014. So as my past man rightly put it, you don't have to be a minister, you don't have to be a president or lawmaker first before this change, before you start this change, like what the Plainfield Revolution is doing. You can start this change from the community, from the grassroots level. In fact, what we have even established, the work of changing this country, as dirty as this work is not a clean clothes work. A clean clothes work is not an air conditioner kind of work. It's a dirty work that must be done by a clean person.
relatively clean and knowledgeable person, but not something that we will do while riding air-conditioned cars or while sitting in air-conditioned office for now. It's a dirty work that needs to be done by clean people. As last but not the least, Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Madam Linda Thomas Greenfield. She just recently warned her American Liberian mischief-making government as saying, quote, "Let me stress, violence must be avoided at all costs now, and no one should die in an effort to express their political beliefs," etc. We say, ladies and gentlemen, as we close, let's re-emphasize that our demand out here today is very simple, and it goes like this in summary. We are saying, LPRC, you claim to have dismissed us for reasons that you are still fumbling for up to 4 years now to establish. But your dismissal letter, apart from expressing an inconsistent justification for your action, also carries a criminally misrepresented dismissing authority. Now, as a result of your action, you have both rudely disrupted our professional career and as a result damaged it, as well as damaged our future, while at the same time you have brought grave humiliation upon our family, in one sense holding all other things constant, however, because as God's children we know that there's a preordination, but holding all other things constant, as we see from economics, these are the things that have happened to the Kartee's family. But we think, LPRC, that you must not have your cake and eat it at the same time, meaning you can't inflict all this wound on our persons and our future and then turn around and give us a fake dismissal instrument. No. LPRC and the government of Liberia, you can't be that cruel into forcing us to be two-time losers in life. So we only now need that fake document rectified so that we can start putting our broken pieces back together, but now on a cleaner slate by the grace of God. In addition, if this is not done, our conscience will blame us for contributing to or conducing to all of the mess listed above, and many more, and their attending unspeakable aftermath, all factor into the innocent blood and perpetual suffering of our people in this country, something we rebuke and will never accept to be part of by the grace of God. That's why we are not claiming the amount that you currently owe us in damages for your very cruel action against us. Remember that if we were to calculate how much you owe us for the over 48 months now in salaries and benefits as a bona fide manager, we'll be speaking in a tune of far above US $300,000. But we frankly don't want to claim any cent from an institution that we have now established thoroughly to be set up to suck and live on the blood and future of our people through an evil underhand agenda under the guise of running state-owned business enterprise. Your whole objective is fake. This is not an SOE. No SOE operates this way. You were established for five mandates, and you only performing one poorly, and you call yourself SOE. All in the end just to kill our people further. Because you can't have an SOE running, then your country running to beg another sisterly country to come and build 31-mile road, taking 6 years on a very special road that you are on. Why should we have an LPRC, a so-called refinery, operating along the Somalia Drive? And then since 2009, the Liberian government has been begging Japan just to come to do this road, and she's coming out to do it. Then you have a state-owned business enterprise. It's lie. You are set up just to suck the blood of our people. We only want a corrected copy of our so-called dismissal letter to legitimize our complete divorce with you in Liberia, because as it stands with this professed dismissal letter in our hand, we are still part of the LPRC and by extension the GOL. Fellow compatriots in the world at large, remember that anything not done properly is not done yet at all. So we herewith demand that this letter must be corrected now, or else we still remain here for as long as God will permit us until the Americans intervene. For we believe that America despite all of her well-founded criticisms against her, is very mature and capable enough to amicably and ably respond to our peaceful demands. We are confident that America knows very well that these home troops are necessary to now bring sanity to all of us, as our destinies as human beings and God's children are all tied together. As we throw out this simple and humble plea for the world superpower and Liberia's popularly known stepmother, the great United States, to kindly intervene in this issue, America's response will demonstrate their civility, remorse of conscience, and a whole lot of virtues to the world about all their involvement with issues pertaining to our home, and this should be considered one of their biggest challenges in our time. On the other hand, America's refusal to intervene in this purely rational and legitimate request of ours for their input in this case will indicate that they are condemning all of the claims that we are making about their predominantly negative and counterproductive involvements with our homeland since 1816, the outcome of which today is sadly a whole people on this side of the globe with twisted approach to life and a thwarted modus operandi of how to go about doing things, as was described by Dr. James Simon of New York, according to the Wall Street Journal. This is again without prejudice to our innocent, suffering people. We also have proof that what we are requesting of America here today are all things that their own forefathers committed them to doing for us. For example, President William Howard Taft confirmed this before Congress in 1909, that they, America, owe the people of this country some moral obligation, although how this moral obligation is fulfilled has now become a big, long debate. In closing, finally, we say today, Wednesday, April 19, 2017, marks day 3 of week 4 of our peaceful family protest petitioning the US Embassy for this much needed redress. As we have repeatedly mentioned earlier, we have been here at this embassy's main gate since Wednesday, March 29, 2017, politely demanding the American government and people to intervene in our plight, since nobody in our reading and opinion can ever do this kind of intervention in Liberian affairs equal to or even closer to the American government, whose citizens in the first place conceived their Liberia in 1816, physically established it in 1822, and subsequently continued to run it in different forms for their own interest since that time up to date. During the first 2 weeks of our stay here, we sent 2 communications to Ambassador Christine Elder, informing her about our presence here, while also re-echoing our family's polite demand for her government's prompt intervention to lay to rest our case, which the American Liberian government, is completely unable, morally, legally, or otherwise, to ever resolve, even if afforded $1 billion to do so. Because almost all of us contracted different health problems for the first 2 weeks of ear-splitting sunshine of day and deadly mosquito bites at night, we had to take the 3rd week off attending to our health needs, while creating some space for embassy authorities to adequately assess our claims and demands. The 2 communications that we sent out during those first 2 weeks to this effect, whose links we are providing below for proof, are dated Thursday, March 30, 2017 and Tuesday, April 4, 2017 respectively. They were delivered by us in person at the official receptionist or communication receipt desk of the embassy, and were officially logged by them with our signature included on Friday, March 31, 2017 and Tuesday, April 4, 2017 respectively, with all falling on deaf ears as yet. The both letters can be accessed now from https is.gd/KUVWF5, that's the link, or https://rsd.lp/txjr, depending on one's choice of format. And they are named first handwritten letter to Ambassador Elder during protest.doc or .pdf, and second handwritten letter to Ambassador Elder during protest.doc or .pdf, respectively. In line with one of the biggest arguments within these two handwritten letters, we are stressing that we have overwhelmingly established that the part of Benson Street on which we are standing and sleeping does not belong to the American Embassy, and as such they seem to care less about people standing there seeking to petition them. And secondly, we have all rights under international laws to peacefully assemble on any soil, including American soil, to peacefully petition any authority, including American authority. Therefore, we are going to do everything peacefully possible to cross this Benson Street today to the American side of the road and into the affairs to continue our peaceful struggle for redress, God willing. We believe that to lessen the current risk that we are exposed to for huge health complications, which unfortunately could be to the taste of our detractors, we must today enter the American Embassy yard by the grace of God, where when the sun is shining, we can bask under the Americans' well-trimmed trees, and when it is raining, our little family and close dependents of around 10, including one pregnant woman and 2 kids of age 4 and 9, which are still sick currently, can shelter under the eave of those huge embassy buildings. But we can no longer stand out here, and we can't just leave without the Americans talking to us, God willing. And to reinforce these points, we clarified in our second handwritten letter to the ambassador on April 4, 2017, all of the relevant international laws under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that gave us these many rights, and even gave our family, and any family for that matter, elevated privileges as compared to any other societal group, were specified. We just don't understand what's wrong with coming outside to talk to another group of God's children who want to hear from you, even in the midst of accusing you. And this is what the mighty America has been doing, unfortunately to our simple family since 3 weeks now. We also don't understand why this great America will not want to attend quickly to issues pertaining to anybody, or even anything pertaining to this country, when she knows how deeply we all have gotten attached, regardless of the ugly nature of this attachment or connection for now. We are, however, still here, and we like for our fellow compatriots in the world over to know that we are peacefully entering the Americans' own premises today by the grace of God, to take our redress process to another level through His grace. Our resolve to now march peacefully into the embassy premises in observance of our rights under international laws to petition the American people is how far this third civic action stands right now. We want to encourage all families in this country who believe in our conviction that America must now be engaged constructively about all of our common problems as we look for sustained, genuine solutions to our badly exacerbating collective problems. We hope to close up on the family aspect of the Plaintree Revolution from this third and last predominantly family engineered and executed civic action to now get more public and general. Thank you very much for following the Plaintree Revolution so closely now, as it transcends from the single family stage to the national stage by the grace and power of God, who wants to deliver His ever-suffering children in this place right now. Thank you once more.